dependent upon how big the church is, and I've been in some very large churches, some of those hallways are extensive. And what I mean by extensive is I mean long. So what you need to think about as a security element as well, and I know this is a little unusual. Well, let's get real. This whole situation is unusual. Typically in the past, you would leave your gun in the car. A place of worship would be no place in which you would bring a firearm into God's house. However, that is completely changed. It is completely different nowadays. It is going to be one of the major places that I continue to bring a firearm. However, when you're thinking about firearms, we know that we dress up in different types of clothing. Some of us wear suits. Some of us are just wear blue jeans and flip-flops at certain churches. One of the things that you need to consider, especially for the LEOs, because they're probably more likely to have these. However, civilians nowadays, with this, with the capability that we now have, that we can take pistol caliber carbines and basically not have to go do paperwork to get a short barrel rifle, in simplistic terms. In the old days, to get something short in a rifle or something short in a subgun kind of configuration, we used to have to go do a $200 tax stamp. Well, nowadays, these things are sold as pistols, and they're chambered in everything from 5.56 to 300 blackout. That primarily, I believe, is because once you go shorter than 10.5 and 5.56, that twist rate on that round, it's not accurate. And it's different when you run 300 blackout. You can take 300 blackout or 5.56, and with side folding stocks from like Law Tactical or some of the other collapsible stocks that are out on the market, and you can have a very small rifle package. You could also go into a pistol caliber carbine, meaning a 9mm or a 45 in the same type of configuration. And most of the bags nowadays, these discreet bags, are really small. And it's just a shoulder bag. You just put it at your feet. And if the need arises, you have a little bit more of a capability for holding down those longer hallways or taking a shot down a longer hallway instead of using a handgun. Most people, unless they train with a handgun, 25 yards is a really challenging shot for the average person. And some of these hallways that I've been in are 75 to 100 yards long. So if I'm going to plan this operation correctly, if I'm going to set myself up for success as a security element, then I'm going to make sure I have in my church, and maybe one of these pistol caliber carbines is too much because you're in a very small church. So the handgun is perfect for what you have. Now, don't get me wrong. You always carry a handgun on you. This is just something extra if the need arises. It really does suck that in this day and age, I've got to talk about, one, being armed in church, two, how do we secure our children? How do we secure the area in which we're going to be in when the preacher is giving his sermon? It sucks that I got to bring up even a rifle capability nowadays, that we may need a rifle inside a church. However, this is the day we live in. So you either prepare for it and set yourself up for success, or find yourself in a situation where you're writing the how to do it manual. The reason why we got the Navy dive tables, and that's the table on your watch that tells you, hey, this is how long I stay at depth, right? And after I've done a 80-foot dive and I stay down there for 40 minutes, my next dive that's going to be at 30 minutes can only be for 11. Because if not, I'm going to go get bent. So the way we got the Navy dive tables is from guys getting bent or dead. And I don't have to write that manual nowadays. So when we're looking at security procedures and we're looking at like types of weapons and things of that nature, these are some things that unfortunately we have to take into consideration. Do you need a long gun? Well, if the answer is yes, or if your gut tells you we probably do, then bring one, okay? There's a lot that goes into this security stuff. These are only some minor details that I can cover with you. There's a lot of details that really need to kind of be covered in depth, and some stuff that I don't want to cover on this video because the information doesn't need to go out there beyond what a normal security team would take part in. So with that said, I hope these give you some good considerations in regards to securing things a little bit better for your church. I hope that this at least opens your mind in thinking of some other ways that aren't necessarily things that I've brought up in this video that'll help protect you and your family while you are in church. Remember, I know it sounds dumb, but just something as simple as when we bow our head for a moment of prayer, you can bow your head ever so slightly. You can even get on your knees if you want. Just keep your head up and your eyes open and pay attention to what's happening around you. And I will leave you with this. If something looks odd, it probably is odd. If it smells like shit and it looks like shit, don't go stick your finger in it. It's probably shit. And what we do realize is that as human beings, we've had this animal instinct for a long period of time. And that's because, well, we were hunted, and that was hunted by both man and animal. And what we're starting to find is that at least at this point, depending upon where you live, you're being hunted by man. Now, of course, out here in the wilderness, I've got wolves and bear and everything else, and the ecosystem basically out here means that there's always something genetically more superior than me out here. So I have to watch out for both man and animal and pay attention to what those signs are. That means I have to trust my instincts. I have to trust my gut. And if something is just stirring up inside me, then that's that caution indicator light going off, going, hey, it is wrong. Something is wrong. Pay attention to that. So I will leave you with that. Mindset is very, very important. It's another thing that you need to consider. Mindset is one of those things where when we look at it, yes, we want to be a good shooter. We want to be a good tactician. We want to be good at hand-to-hand or edged weapons. We need to know when to pull the trigger, which means that we need to know use of force, deadly force. And then at the same time, we need to actually be capable of doing it. And that's a real challenge. You could have all those other things mastered, but if your mindset's not where it needs to be, you'll fall victim to hesitation because you're not really ready to do it. So those are other aspects that you also need to consider and work on.